Chapter 10. The next morning, Joan woke up slowly, opening her eyes and stretching luxuriantly. She flipped over onto her side, only to find Brandon propped up on one elbow, watching her. She bolted up into a seated position, holding the comforter over her chest. "What the hell is your problem?" "What? You're just watching me sleep? That's so creepy." "Is not. You're the cutest sleeper ever. Lay down, snuggle a while." He grabbed her shoulders and eased her back onto her pillow. She gave in and cuddled up against his bare chest. "Okay, if you insist. What time is it, anyway?" Brandon craned his neck to look at the clock. 7:15. Joan sat up again. "Crap, I gotta get to work. I gotta call into work. And we have to get you out of here before anyone sees you. Derek will never let us hear the end of it. And we have work to do. People are going to start coming in for key testing at 9, and we should do Beth's and Ed's test first." Brandon sighed and stretched. "Fine, but you know me, I'm no good at rushing in the morning. I need breakfast and time to adjust to being awake." "Yeah, okay." Joan pushed the covers back and swung her legs onto the floor. Still naked, she strode to the dresser and began to rummage in the top drawer. "Here, you can't be wearing the same clothes as last night." She pulled out a pair of men's jeans and a black t-shirt and tossed them to Brandon. "I don't have any of your underwear here. You'll have to turn yesterday's inside out." He caught the clothing and held up the shirt. "These aren't mine." She froze halfway into her jeans. "What the hell are you talking about?" "Just kidding." Brandon raised his eyebrows over a broad grin. "Wow, you were really concerned there for a moment. You've been keeping guys' clothes around lately?" She picked up a shoe and threw it at him. "You're the worst. Get dressed." As Brandon pulled on the garments, Joan grabbed her phone and prepared her fake cough, pulling up her boss's number and hitting call. "Hey, Doug," she said weakly. "I'm not gonna make it in today." A few minutes later, Brandon was climbing down the 5-foot wooden ladder she kept outside her window for Friday to sit on. And then suddenly, he was clambering back up. "What the hell are you doing?" Joan hissed. "Veronica's out there. She's butt-ass fucking naked, lying in the middle of your backyard." Joan peered out the window. Sure enough, Veronica had spread a yoga mat on a blanket and was lying on her back without a stitch of clothing, her eyes closed, arms spread wide, and legs folded up so that her knees peeked toward the overcast sky. The key rested in the center of her chest, directly between her breasts. They gaped at her for a moment in shocked silence. "Well, that settles it," Joan said finally. "That bitch is crazy. Come on, we'll sneak you out past Derek. He's probably still asleep anyway. He had to have been super jet-lagged, right?" "Sure, or crashed from all the speed." "Or he could be back up and on more speed, I guess." Brandon shrugged. "Let's go find out." They crept to the door, peeking out into the hallway and listening for any sounds of stirring from the living room. All they heard was the ticking of the big clock in the rarely used dining room, so they slipped out and made their way down the hall. They paused again at the entrance to the living room, but Derek lay motionless on the couch, breathing evenly. Joan grabbed Brandon's hand and pulled him toward the front door. They got about halfway there when Derek's voice came from behind them. "Do you have any tea?" Joan spun around. "Tea? Yes, or coffee, if you prefer to be a normal American and not pretend you're from England." She sighed. She gestured wildly. "And look, Brandon has just arrived to join us for breakfast." "Uh-huh." Derek closed his eyes again. "If it will make you feel more comfortable, I'll pretend to believe that. Just don't allow yourselves to be distracted today. And I want tea." "Telling us you're going to pretend to believe something is not really consistent with actually pretending to believe it," Brandon pointed out. "Well, I'll pretend it to everyone else. Is the tea forthcoming?" Joan sighed. "Yes, we will make you some fucking tea." Derek opened his eyes and lifted his head. "Not a morning person?" "I usually am. You're just making me grumpy." She shot over her shoulder as she walked into the kitchen. Brandon followed, grabbing the kettle from the stove and taking it to the sink as Joan headed for the coffee maker. With the easy rhythm of two people who had breakfasted together many times, they began to assemble the meal, making the hot beverages, mixing up pancake batter, pulling pans from cupboards, pausing for little kisses here and there. Brandon took Derek his key. Then he brought it back to add milk, and then returned once more for sugar, while Joan heated the griddle for the pancakes. She scooped batter into puddles, humming as she watched for bubbles, and then flipped them over. Another pan slid onto the burner beside hers, and moments later, the kitchen filled with the heavenly aroma of sizzling bacon and the sound of eggs cracking into a bowl. Joan made a stack of flat cakes on the plate and poured more batter, smiling as she felt Brandon's arms slide around her waist. She turned for a kiss. As his lips touched hers, however, he let out an abrupt yelp, lunging against Joan, who lurched back, slamming against the hot stove. Joan looked past Brandon just in time to see Veronica's naked, swinging hips leaving the kitchen. "What the hell was that?" she asked. That randy little so-and-so just smacked my ass. Randy little so-and-so, are you 80? Derek's voice drifted in from the living room. What on earth? Put some damn clothes on. Well, at least she managed to catch Derek off guard, Joan laughed. She turned her attention back to the griddle, picking up her spatula. As for you, those eggs need stirring. Get your head in the game, Barber. The doorbell chimed. Can you get that? She called to Derek, assuming Veronica had retired to her room. She heard the door open and then a shriek. Joan stuck her head around the doorway and saw Veronica's bare posterior, and beyond her, Beth covering her face with both arms. Joan sighed, exasperated. Veronica! Go get dressed. Beth, come on in. There's coffee and breakfast is almost ready. As Beth edged forward, eyes still covered, Ed jogged up the front steps, smoke rising from the joint in his hand as he pushed past her into the house. Nice tits, Veronica. Did I hear coffee and breakfast? Joan pounded on the doorframe for attention. Ed, Veronica, and Derek peered at her. Beth turned in her direction, but didn't lower her arms. Ed, there's no smoking in my house. Veronica, go put some clothes on before Beth has a damn heart attack. Derek, come in here and help Brandon set the table for breakfast. Beth, Veronica just left the room. You're safe. Beth cautiously peeked over the crook of her elbow, only uncovering her face when she was sure there was no sign of Veronica. Ed ambled back inside, and Derek reluctantly rose from his couch, dressed in his lab coat. Had he slept in it? How did the damn thing stay so immaculate and unwrinkled? 15 minutes later, they sat down for breakfast. Derek, Joan, Ed, and Brandon ate the bacon, eggs, and pancakes, while Veronica and Beth nibbled on some fruit. To Joan's surprise, Veronica accepted a large mug of black coffee. It's my only vice, sweetie, she said when asked. Don't call me that, Joan replied. Brandon interjected. So, Veronica, what the hell were you doing outside on the lawn this morning without any clothes on? I was meditating on the key. I placed it on my crown chakra, my third eye, and my heart for 10 minutes to see if I could gain any insight into the curse. Derek sipped his tea. Interesting concept. Was it effective? Veronica nodded emphatically. It was. During the first session, my crown showed me the key's energetic fields. It was quite ugly, showing violent colors, and it felt sort of slimy. Then the ajna, that's the third eye chakra. She gestured toward her forehead. There I picked up some actual images, mostly of Mrs. Olson opening the desk with her key, which explains where it picked up the curse energy, and another woman. A beautiful woman about our age, like seriously, stunningly beautiful, except that she looked a little bit like Mrs. Olson around the eyes, but I'd never seen her before. What was she doing? Asked Brandon. Veronica shivered, staring at me, just staring. Something bleak in Veronica's tone brought a lump to Joan's throat, and she set down her egg-laden fork. What does that mean? I don't know. I don't know who she was. She was only there for a moment. Then it was back to images of the desk and Mrs. Olson. And the heart? Brandon asked. Hate. Pure, unadulterated hate. Veronica took a big gulp of her coffee, then set down her mug and toyed with the handle. It was awful. I've never felt so hated, but it also felt unfocused, if that makes sense. Like it wasn't directed at me, but I was in its field of hatred, just coincidentally. That could be a good sign, declared Derek. Maybe we could shift the field away from us. What, and onto someone else? Joan shook her head. That's not okay. Veronica held up a hand. No, he has a point. We could shift it to an object. Maybe even the key itself. And then the entire curse would be focused onto something that is naturally blind and dumb rather than us. It would essentially neutralize it. How is that possible? Beth asked. How would you do that without using witchcraft? Well, we would have to use witchcraft, of course, said Brandon. Beth folded her arms, her face stony. I will not use the tools of the devil. Veronica rolled her eyes. Witchcraft isn't a tool of the devil, sweetie. As far as I'm concerned, everything you just said was tools of the devil, she shot back, with your talk of chakras and violent energy. What is violent energy if not witchcraft? You're messing with dangerous forces, and I just hope you turn back to Jesus before it's too late for your soul. I wasn't messing with the violent energy, you prissy little... Hey now. Ed stood up, spreading his arms to separate the two women. There's no point in getting our egglets in a twist. Egglets? Joan frowned. Isn't that the hole your shoelaces thread through? Is it? A lady I used to know always said it. I thought it had something to do with an apron string. Ed's brow furrowed as he considered the implications. Brandon pulled out his phone and typed furiously as the rest watched in silence. Nope, it's the hole in your shoe, he confirmed. Ed turned back to Veronica and Beth. Look, the point is that we can't be turning against each other here. Let's just agree that this curse needs to get lifted, and we'll use whatever tools we can to lift it. He held up his hand again to forestall Beth. But we can also agree that no one will have to do anything they find personally offensive. Beth, you don't have to do any witchcraft, okay? There's plenty of us here who can do it instead, and plenty of other stuff for you to do. And on the other hand, no telling the rest of us that we need to find Jesus or any kind of crap like that. We're all adults here, and we can decide on our own religion. But no! Ed pounded his hand on the table, and everyone jumped. No trying to save us from anything but the curse. We've all heard it from you before. We don't need to hear it again. Tight-lipped, Beth nodded. Good. Now let's enjoy our breakfast. Ed sat down and began shoveling eggs and bacon into his mouth.